Hello, everybody. Mike from Southern California again, and you're on the mic. Now, before I get into today's main topic, I guess, what you might call house cleaning or some announcements here. Of course, as you know, I've been sick lately, so again, there won't be a VA profile premiere tonight, but next week I'm back on full schedule. It'll be Monday through Friday. We'll be back to daily content. Um, Tuesday nights will be the anime convention preview, and then of course next Friday, we're recording it this Sunday, but next Friday will be the return of the Voices Big and Small. So I haven't figured out exactly yet who I'm going to do. I got to review what I've done so far and all that. So, um, but I'm back on regular schedule now. The on the mic will you'll see every day again. Voices Big and Small will be premiering on Fridays. So we're back on track here. Um, so now with that out of the way, with that little piece of business out of the way, I was going to do this a couple weeks ago when I was last video, but as you all know, I got sick, so I decided to do it this week. Um, So, a few weeks ago, I decided, after hearing about it for all the talk for such a while there, I finally got around to watching Star Trek Continues. Of course, as everybody knows, Star Trek Continues is the fan film done by produced and directed and starring Vic Mignogna. Um, we you know it's been mentioned quite a bit. As everybody knows, it was going back to the original Star Trek series. It was supposed to be obviously a 5 season show, 5 year show. It was canceled after three. The idea of the original 5 year mission. Okay. So Vic, as being growing up a fan of Star Trek and all that, he wanted to pay tribute to it by basically finishing up that 5 year mission. And he did so with this fan film, Star Trek Continues, that you can catch on YouTube, totally free. They don't allow comments, but I wanted to give a review of it. I decided to watch it, and I'll be quite honest with you guys. It's pretty good. I mean, you know, for those who were fans of the Star Trek series, particularly of the first series, this was a good homage to it. If you like the feel of the original series, you like kind of the storyline, how they did it. Star Trek Continues. That's exactly what Vic does. He just we kind of see how they decide to bridge the gap to some things that came up in Star Trek Next Generation, like holodecks and the idea of a ship's counselor and all that. That was all touched upon in this series as well. So so with that being said, yeah. So much of the feel and the mystique of the original series was maintained here, and even in the casting, you could see it. I'll do that now. Of course, it was kind of a mix of Vic obviously got a number of his number of his voice actor friends involved. We all know that Todd Haberkorn portrayed Spock in it. Starting with episode 3, 3 through the rest of the series, Chuck Huber played the role of Dr. Henry Bones McCoy. Um, Bo Billingsley had a guest spot in it as well. Bo Billingsley, for those of you who don't know, he's the voice of Jet Black from Cowboy Bebop. A very very well known LA kind of, well, maybe not as well known, but a pretty prolific voice actor out here in LA. He's Jet Black in Cowboy Bebop. Um trying to, he was one of the elders in Naruto. One of the council members. He was the guy count Homura. That's what his character's name was. Homura. He was Homura. Any of you who you probably have all heard his voice. He has a pretty distinct voice. If you know him, you probably, as I said, would know him best as Jet Black from Cowboy Bebop. So Bo Billingsley, I think, guest starred. I think it was episode 7. You know, aside from of course, and of course, Michael Forrest as well, who Michael Forrest actually, this kind of Michael Forrest probably one of the more interesting cast choices because he has connections both the to the Star Trek community and the VA community. In the Star Trek community, of course, in the first episode of Star Trek Continues, Michael Forrest reprised his role as Apollo. He was Apollo in in the earlier Star Trek episode in which Kirk met Apollo and the gods on that one. But I think if I remember correctly, and somebody is a little bit more familiar with the titles can probably, but I think it's Whom Gods Destroy or something like that. Was the name of the title of it, or no? Who Mourns for Apollo? That's what it was. Who Mourns for Apollo was the title of the original Star Trek episode, and it was Michael Forrest who had the role there, and then he reprised the role of sorts here in Star Trek Continues. Now, from his VA career, most of you would know him as the English voice of Alex Rosewater from Big O. So, like, he was probably a lot more involved with the a lot of the LA dub stuff that was from like the 90s and early 2000s. Obviously he's kind of up there in years, so he's not as active now as he was a while ago. But basically his probably for most fans here, his two most famous roles you probably know him as either Apollo from the original Star Trek, reprising the role in reprising the role in this series, as well as the voice of Alex Rosewater in Cowboy Bebop. Also, some other kind of well-known names in the sci-fi community. Lou Ferrigno guest starred in episode 2 as an Orion slave master. Um, for those of you who are probably my age and a little older, might remember him as the Incredible Hulk from the television series The Incredible Hulk back in the 70s. Co-starring Bill Bixby, who played the role of Dr. Bruce Banner. Um, let's see, Aaron Gray, who is known for a role in Battlestar Galactica as well as a role on Silver Spoons. Um, she was in it. And then you do have, as I said, you do have some Star Trek, aside from Michael Forrest, of course, you do have some Star Trek alum also involved, um, namely Marina Sirtis and Michael Dorn, from the Next Generation. Now, in Marina Sirtis' case, and of course they also have been involved in as VAs, because both Marina Sirtis and Michael Dorn lent their voice to the Disney produced animated cartoon Gargoyles back in the 90s as well, with Marina doing the voice of Demona and Michael Dorn doing the voice of Coldstone. Um, Now, their involvement here, particularly in Marina Sirtis' case, because this was in Marina Sirtis' case, it was a very interesting her casting in Continues here, Star Trek Continues, because she would provide the computer voice, the Enterprise computer voice during about half the episodes, which was a role that was originally done by on the original series as well as on TNG by I'm not exactly how it's pronounced, Mahel Barrett Roddenberry. Now, for those of you who don't know who I'm talking about the actress who, of course, she was I think she was a computer voice. I do know definitely she was a computer voice on TNG on Star Trek: The Next Generation. She was also probably her more notable role was as Nurse Christine Chapel on the original Star Trek series, and then of course, and then in kind of an interesting twist of fate, as it were, how Marina Sirtis did the voice of the Enterprise computer on Continues, Star Trek Continues. She was, of course, as everybody probably knows, was portrayed Counselor Deanna Troi on Next Generation, and Majel Barrett Roddenberry, who is, as I said, Nurse Christine Chapel in the original Star Trek series, as well as the computer voice on on um, on the Next Generation. Also portrayed Lwaxana Troi on The Next Generation and Deep Space Nine. Lwaxana Troi, among other things, was, of course, Deanna Troi's mother, aka Marina Sirtis. So, kind of the interesting cycle of connections there in terms of that. You have basically the girl who was the daughter, who was the on screen daughter of the woman who also provided the voice for the Next Generation computer, now being the computer for the Enterprise on Star Trek Continues. And then, as everybody knows, Michael Dorn's connection, he provided the voice of the Mirror Universe's Enterprise in Episode 3. Regarding the continuation of the Mirror Universe story from Mirror Mirror. Let's see. As I'm trying to think here. So yeah, and then of course they cast Chris Doohan as Scotty, taking on the role that his father, the late James Doohan, had done. Chris Doohan becoming a modern version of Montgomery Scotty Scott, Lieutenant Commander, Chief Engineer of the original Enterprise. One of the other things I noticed here, and one of the other things I noticed. Okay, now I don't know if anybody else noticed this. For those who may have watched, you know, watched Star Trek Continues. I don't. For those who may have seen that series on YouTube, um, you know, in another interesting casting choice. I don't know if anybody else noticed this, but the actor who they got brought in to play Lieutenant Sulu, Grant Imahara. If you look at him and you compare George Takei from back when George Takei was portraying Sulu on the original series. They do look quite a bit alike. I mean, this talk about. They say you have. At times they say you have a double in the world. They say that everybody's got a double somewhere out there. Right? That's one myth. That's out there. I think in a way, Grant Imahara, even though they're I think like 15 years apart in age, but you look at this guy Grant Imahara, and he looks he could be almost a spit image of George Takei. You know, that was one of the things I noticed about him. It's like his you look at him and he does. I mean, you would almost think that he was like maybe Takai's grandson or something like that. That's kind of the funny. That's kind of the funny thing. And then another, of course, casting, interesting casting. Of course, this was before all the drama went down and stuff like that. But as everybody knows, Michelle Specht portrayed, at least in Kanan, if we're to believe it continues as a part of the regular Star Trek Kanan, she was the first ship's counselor. She portrayed the first ship's counselor, Dr. L. McKenna. Um, so now I know a lot of us are not too happy with Michelle. I know it's a sensitive subject because of her relationship with Vic and how what it is now. But you know, as an actress, she did do a good. I think she did really do a good job on the series. Okay, let's forget for a moment. Let's forget about current day drama. Let's forget about what's happened over the past year. Let's forget about all the garbage that we've all been having to endure. Okay, as an actress in her role as Dr. McKenna, Michelle did a good job. Give credit where it's due. You may not you may not be happy with the person, you may not like the person, you know, because of other circumstances. But sometimes, when you're looking at this stuff, you should really take a step back and look at their work, right? You know, I think if we all could learn to separate the artist from the person, we might all be better off. Now, granted, I'm one of those who had always, for a long time, had felt that part of the reason that VAs got cast as certain, as the characters, because there was a part of the character already in I don't believe that as much anymore because I don't believe, like, for example, with like Monica and Jamie, I don't believe some of the characters they play would be pulling some of the baloney that we see them pulling right now. Okay, so anyways, but yeah, as an actress, Michelle did a good job on that series. Okay, and it's okay to praise her acting ability, even if you're not happy with her because what they say, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. We know that we know. I think everybody knows about that situation. Wasn't good for either side. People got hurt there. We should be respectful of that situation. And I can simply say that Michelle in Star Trek Continues did a good job as an actress. Um, and of course, so did Vic, and so did everybody. There was a good cast there, and you had some Star Trek alum in there. You had some other voice actors in there. I honestly feel that not just with the casting, but even with how they were telling the stories, Vic really did capture the essence and feel of the original series. And I think for a lot of Star Trek fans, I think if you've seen it, then you probably do understand what I'm talking about. And if you haven't seen it, I would hope that it would make you want to see it because it is a good series. I really do believe that. they really did in the storytelling and the casting and the way they would interact with each other. You know, I think a lot of people get upset at like some of the reboots that are coming out now of series and stuff like that. What people are trying to, and how and I know Yellow Flash and Tug talk a lot about this. How Hollywood's been kind of going the SJW route and trying to put even into reboots into very very well established and well liked franchises. They're trying to push the agenda in there, and it's basically so with these reboots and with some of this stuff where they're pushing agendas, it's ruining the franchises. But Vic did not ruin the franchise here. I think the way he presented it was a true homage to the original series, and I would highly recommend you guys check it out. Now, with that being said, uh, with that being said, let's continue. Let's move on to this day in Nietzsche history. Okay, so here we go. So first, I'm going back 80 years ago. On this date in 1940, going on newsstands, Fawcett Publications, with Fawcett Comics, which was known as the original publishers of Captain Marvel. Um, they released on this date on the newsstands um, the first issue of Slam Bang Comics. Um, it would only last. It would of course only last like only last about 7 issues. Um, about half the characters moved on to like Master Comics. Um, but yeah, on this date in 1940, Slam Bang Comics debuted with issue number 1. Moving on from there. Okay, on this date in 1967, um, was the passing of Oscar Fischinger. Fischinger. He was an abstract art animator, experimental filmmaker, and painter. This guy was basically known for doing kind of artsy like artsy like short films. Basically, this guy, some of his short film work, his whole idea was he wanted to animate music. He wanted to show people what music actually looked like. He was, as he said, an abstract animator. In fact, I think one of his films, Motion Painting #1, that was came out in 1947, was a part of the United States National Film Registry. Some people would argue that his work was probably some of the earliest forms of like the music videos that we would end up seeing on MTV in the 80s. Like like he he Oscar Fischinger, a lot of his work came out from the 20s to the 40s and was short films in which he was trying to animate music. Um, he eventually quit studio work though because he felt like the there shouldn't be studio work. It should all everybody should just do everything individual. As a painter, he's of course had some works displayed in um in museums and stuff like that. So yeah, so on this date, 1967, was the passing of Oscar Fischinger. He was born in Geinhausen, Germany, in on June 22nd, 1900, and then passed away on this date in Los Angeles. He had emigrated to America in 1936 to start work with Paramount, and he did work with Paramount, MGM before moving on to Disney. So that's what happened on this date in 1960. Of course, animation cartoons. Um, and I'd also like to wish a happy 38th birthday today to Yutsei Matsui. Who is Yutsei Matsui, you ask me? Well, he is a manga artist known for the manga Majin Tante Nogami Nero. Basically, it's translated as Demon Detective Nero Nogami, which the manga ran in Weekly Shonen Jump from 2005 to 2009. One of the other things that he's currently working on is the manga for Assassination Classroom. He also provided the voice of the manga artist in episode 25 of the anime series Majin Tante Nogami Nero. Also, let's see, and according to this, he also served as an assistant to Yoshio Sawai, a manga artist of Bo 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 Bo. So, um, so happy 38th birthday to Matsui, manga artist for Assassination Classroom and Demon Detective Nero Nogami. And finally, for the pro wrestling fans out there, on this date in 2000, Chris Benoit, Eddie Guerrero, Dean Malenko, and Perry Saturn debuted in the WWE as the Radicals after having left WCW for various reasons. They found themselves in WWE, where Benoit, who'd been being pushed as a main eventer in WCW, would continue. I think you did see um, Malenko and Saturn would be would team up a bit, and then Eddie Guerrero was being pushed as a second tier guy, um, secondary championship. You know, now in my own personal opinion, now as a historian, so that I appreciate past quite a bit. Um, these guys, if they had been allowed to stay together as a group, could have been a modern day version of the Four Horsemen. Granted, they were all genuinely. I mean, you look at the original Four Horsemen of Flair, um, Tully Blanchard, and the Andersons. They were all decent sized heavyweights. These guys. Saturn was probably the only real heavyweight of the group, and then Chris Benoit, even though he was pushed as a heavyweight, would probably been in historical terms have been considered more a junior heavyweight, and of course Guerrero and Malenko were cruiserweights. But these guys were all pushed as heavyweights. These guys were very talented. I think they could have been like the Horsemen. They could have been a very dominant force if they were allowed to stay together. And it was on this date in 2000, 20 years ago, that they all debuted. It is kind of sad that two of them have passed on, Chris Benoit and Eddie Guerrero. And I know a lot of people are, obviously because of what we found out towards the end, they are not happy with Benoit because of, what ended up happening. It was a true tragedy. A true tragedy for everybody involved. You know, you know, Perry Saturn too. Um, he fell on, after leaving wrestling, he had supposedly fallen on some hard times. I don't know how he's doing now, but it's kind of a shame. This was a very talented group of athletes who, yes, Benoit did quite a bit. He was eventually a WWE World Heavyweight Champion. I think he was WCW World Heavyweight Champion as well. Malenko was a very Malenko's a very solid technician. He's on, I think he's even an agent with the WWE right now. Eddie Guerrero was a very good high flyer, and was, due to his lineage, he had some good technical expertise as well. And what a lot of people probably don't remember or realize is that Perry Saturn trained under Killer Kowalski. And I don't know if many of you know this, but you know who else trained under Killer Kowalski? Triple H did. And so did the late China Joanie Laurer. Killer Kowalski trained three very talented individuals. And we know that in China's case, her situation is a very sad situation. Perry Saturn's situation is kind of a sad situation. He's not dead, but, but still. Just goes to show you, you know, how things can turn sometimes. Well, anyways, I know the last couple of days of videos have been a bit longer. I guess just simply, yeah, this one's over 30 minutes already. Wow. So I'll try to get through the rest of it here. So that's basically all that happened on this day in niche history. Um, Let me finish up with the typical spiel. Check if you want to contact me directly. My Discord is down there. You can check the links below. As you guys know, I promote a bunch of different dub companies because remember, Funimation is not the only game in town. I'm still, of course, promoting the GoFundMe's. As always, guys, never feel like you have to donate. If you have the means to and it's on your heart to do so, please consider donating. If you if you if you've already donated, please consider donating again. And and if you're not able to donate, you can still help out the cause by sharing the link. Because after all, sharing is caring, and you never know. Maybe there's somebody in your circle of friends who might see this and say, "Yeah, I want to help out too." Sometimes just simply getting the word out is plenty help enough. So, so with all that being said, if you like this content, please consider liking, commenting, sharing, and subscribing. I look forward to the conversation with you guys, as long as, of course, as they're civil and respectful. Um, and with that, I will bid you guys adieu till Monday. Bye.